In the quiet town of Raventon, where the streets were lined with old maple trees and the evenings always smelled faintly of rain, two lives were about to change in a way neither of them expected. Ethan Cole was not someone who believed in fate. He was practical, reserved, and focused entirely on his work as a graphic designer. He lived alone in a small apartment above a bookstore, spending most of his time designing logos and avoiding unnecessary conversations. Life for him was simple when it stayed predictable. On the other side of town lived Aria Bennett, a young woman who believed the world was full of hidden meanings. She worked at a small art cafe where walls were covered with paintings made by local artists. Aria loved color stories and the idea that even silence could speak if you listened carefully. Their paths would never have crossed if not for a rainy Tuesday afternoon. That day, Ethan walked into the art cafe to escape the storm. His umbrella had broken, his phone battery was dead, and he needed somewhere dry to wait before heading home. He chose a corner table, hoping to remain unnoticed. Aria was behind the counter sketching in her notebook. When she noticed him, he looked out of place, too quiet, too distant, as if he carried a world of thoughts. He refused to share. "Coffee?" she asked gently when she approached. "Black," Ethan replied without looking up. Aria smiled faintly. "Everything okay?" "Yes," he said quickly, though his voice suggested otherwise. She didn't push further. Instead, she placed the coffee on his table and returned to her work. But something about him stayed in her mind. Ethan, meanwhile, noticed something unusual. The cafe wasn't just a cafe, it felt alive. The walls were painted with emotions instead of colors. People laughed softly, conversations flowed like music, and Aria moved through it all like she belonged to every corner of the room. When the rain grew heavier, Ethan had no choice but to stay longer. Minutes turned into an hour. Silence turned into observation, and without meaning to, he kept looking at her. Days passed and Ethan returned to the cafe again. Not because he needed shelter this time, but because something about that place felt different. Aria always greeted him the same way, with a calm smile that didn't demand anything from him. Slowly their conversations began. At first they were simple. "You always drink black coffee?" Aria asked one day. "Yes." "That sounds lonely." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "It's just coffee." Aria laughed softly. "Everything is never just anything." He didn't understand her, but he didn't leave either. Weeks turned into months. Ethan learned that Aria painted when she was sad, that she believed every person had a color inside them, that she once wanted to travel the world but stayed because she loved the small town too much to leave it behind. Aria learned that Ethan lost his parents early, that he built walls around himself because letting people in felt dangerous, that silence was not his comfort, it was his shield. Despite their differences, something began to grow between them. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, like sunlight slowly entering a dark room. One evening, Aria invited Ethan to an art exhibition in a nearby gallery. He almost refused. "I don't understand art," he said. "You don't have to understand it," she replied. "Just feel it." So he went. The gallery was filled with paintings, each one telling a different story. Ethan stood awkwardly in front of a large canvas of a stormy sky. Aria joined him. "What do you see?" "Chaos," he said. She shook her head. "I see survival." That sentence stayed with him longer than he expected. For the first time, Ethan began to see the world the way Aria did, not as something to control, but something to experience. One night, as they walked back from the cafe, Aria stopped under a streetlight. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked. "All the time," Ethan replied. "I plan everything." "And does it ever go the way you plan?" He hesitated. "Not really." Aria smiled. "Then maybe the best things aren't planned." Ethan looked at her. The streetlight softened her face, and for a moment everything felt still. "You confuse me," he said honestly. "That's a good thing," she replied. Before he could think too much, Aria reached out and gently held his hand. It was not a dramatic moment, but it changed everything. After that night, everything between them shifted. Ethan started visiting the cafe more often, not out of habit, but desire. Aria began leaving small sketches on his table, drawings of things she thought reminded her of him. A quiet sea, a closed book, a single star in a dark sky. He never said it directly, but he started looking forward to those drawings more than anything else in his day. One evening, Ethan finally admitted something he had been avoiding. "I think I've fallen in love with you," he said quietly. Aria didn't respond immediately. She simply looked at him as if she was waiting for him to understand something on his own. "Why does that sound like a fear?" she asked gently. "Because it is," Ethan said. Everything I care about, I am afraid of losing it. Aria stepped closer. Then don't you think of losing? Think of having? For a while it felt like nothing could break what they had. But life has always had its own timing. Ethan received an offer from a design firm in another city, an opportunity he had worked years for. It was everything he wanted professionally, but it was far from Aria. He didn't tell her immediately. Instead, he spent days, silently struggling with the decision. When Aria finally found out, she didn't react the way he expected. "You should go," she said. Ethan frowned. "That is it." She nodded. "You've always been holding yourself back. I want to be the reason you stop growing." He shook his head. "What about us?" Aria smiled softly, though her eyes carried sadness. "Love doesn't always mean staying." That night, neither of them slept. The day Ethan left, the sky was grey. Aria met him at the station. She handed him a small envelope. "Open it when you arrive," she said. He looked at her for a long moment, memorizing everything the way she stood, the way she smiled, even when she was hurting. "I don't know how to do this without you," he admitted. "You already do," she replied. The train arrived. People moved around them. Time felt heavier than usual. Ethan hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged her. It lasted only a few seconds, but it held everything they couldn't say. Then he left. In the new city, Ethan succeeded quickly. His career grew. His name became known. But every night when everything was quiet, he opened the envelope. Inside was a single drawing. It showed two figures standing under the same sky, far apart but connected by a thin line of light. Under it, Aria had written, "Distance doesn't erase what was real." Months passed. Ethan visited Raventon again one spring morning. The cafe was still there. Aria was still there. When she saw him, she didn't look surprised. She simply smiled as if she had been expecting him all along. "You came back," she said. Ethan nodded. "I think I finally understand something." About what, she asked. He looked at her, this time without hesitation, about staying, and for the first time, neither distance nor fear stood between them anymore.